Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Juggernaut, and this is going to be a review of the Forgotten City DLC for the game The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Specifically Special Edition in my case, and that will become relevant later down the line. But, first and foremost, this is going to be a spoiler-free review for the most part, for like 99%. I will not show any gameplay footage of the DLC itself, as I can't string together more than 5 minutes of it without spoiling something, and like I said, I want this to be a spoiler-free video review. So, this video is mostly going to be focusing on the story. Now, I will mention a few gameplay elements that I sort of had a bit of a grind with, and had a bit of a issue with, a few bugs and a few things that are working as intended, but I sort of would prefer a little bit differently. But for the most part, this is going to be focusing on the story. So, first of all, what is the Forgotten City DLC? Well, again, without spoilers, it is a DLC for Skyrim and Skyrim Special Edition, which offers around 6 to 8 to 10 hours of content. Fully voiced with a fairly wide variety of NPCs, and takes place in a, well, like the name suggests, a forgotten city, which you come across accidentally. Well, someone came across accidentally, and you're sort of dragged into this via a letter. And then all sorts of stuff happens, and stuff that I shan't mention, but essentially, the mod itself takes a lot of story elements from something like Groundhog Day, though there are differences, definitely, and oh boy, there are differences, right? But the sort of gist of things is more or less the same.
What was that?
Right, Dragon dealt with. So, like I said, it takes a few of these basic themes and motifs from something like Groundhog Day and similar movies. I think, I don't know, Click could be a thing as well, but that's stretching it a little bit. So, basically, first, let's get into what's really good about the story. And what is really good about the story is it's believable, right? So that's, I think, for a quest mod, that's often not the case. Well, not often, but especially for the sort of less popular quest mods, they take you to certain areas that don't fit the lore of the game, or they take you to certain things that make some jumps in logic, right? Things either advance too quickly without proper justification. There are problems, right? There are problems. Here, no. It is very believable. I do still have a few questions about the entire thing, but that's relatively minor, and on the whole, the story is fairly clear, believable, and rather easy to understand and get into. From the perspective of, is something like this likely to happen? Is something like this actually, you know, would it work in Skyrim? Would it work in the Elder Scrolls? And yes. Would something like this, you know, how lore-friendly is it? You know, would something like this exist? And the answer is yes. So, even though, and very important to note this, even though I don't think something like this has ever been done in the Elder Scrolls. So, what I'm saying is, I don't think it's like a repetition of, or a take on some of the quests already present in the older Elder Scrolls games. I'm pretty sure this is a very unique thing. Okay, really minor spoiler, something that you do very quickly. Practically as soon as you start the mod, it does meddle with time. Right? That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna, nothing else, that's everything, but it does play on with the notion of time, and paradoxes and stuff like that. There you go. Right, you won't get anything else out of me that's even a minor spoiler, but I don't think the game played much with, or the story of the Elder Scrolls played much with that. ever. A few minor instances here and there, but I don't think that was ever really the case. And no, seeing ghosts in crypts I do not put in the same category. So, essentially, what about the characters? Now here's where it gets interesting, because most of the characters are really bloody well thought out, right? I mean, to be fair, I didn't expect the depth of, I don't know, bloody Raskolnikov from Crime and Punishment from any of them. But they don't exactly disappoint either. Right, so a lot of them are very minor characters, essentially. There are a couple of ones that you sort of get to know rather intimately, in that they're very important to the quests and to the stories and whatnot. But for the most part, there's woman behind this wall. But for the most part, it's really a case of minor characters, but they do have, and there's going to be a terrible way of explaining it, but they do have character, right? They do have personalities. They do have a decent bit of depth to them to make them believable, especially if you compare it to the base Elder Scrolls, right? The base Skyrim and even Oblivion and stuff like that suffer from this fact, which is normal for video games and RPGs. Like I said, I don't expect Dostoevsky to be coming out of these characters, but they do have backstories, every single one of them, which is very important and plays very well with the overall theme of you being in this one city, which, I mean, you can tell from the title. Again, it's difficult to talk about this without any spoilers whatsoever. I might do a spoiler section as a separate video, but that depends on how good this one does. But essentially, it plays very well, and it just fits. Everything just fits about their stories being relatively brief, and not that. I'm gonna say not that explored, in that they don't really matter too much, and I suppose you don't really care about them all too much to begin with. But they do have these sort of background and auxiliary NPCs have better backstories than the vast majority of just irrelevant farmers in Skyrim. So, I mean, I'll give you an example. You don't spend a lot of time in that city. Which, for those of you that have played it, is going to be very funny, because there's a joke in there, right? You need to play the mod to understand why that's somewhat humorous. But you don't spend that much time in the city. However, I'd say that I've spent probably more time in Whiterun than I have in this quest mod, right? I mean, you keep going back to Whiterun, right? It's sort of the central area of Skyrim. There's quests there, there's the main quest takes you there, there's all sorts of side quests, things like that, and you get to do. And, yeah, I think I spent more time there, but I have no idea who the hell is anyone in Whiterun, right? A few people get tied to quests, and you sort of remember them. Alright, that's that family, that's that family. But you see a random dude in the street, and you're like, okay, so who's his wife? Does he have a wife? Does he have a family? Where does he live? You don't really know. In the 6, or I think I played around 9 hours of the mod, but in the 9 hours of that mod, I got to know pretty much all of those characters, and they were relevant in some way. Maybe because I was a bit paranoid and paid close attention to all of them, but you could do it, and they were unique. Here's the thing. A regular guard in the city differs from no other guard in any other hold in Skyrim, and let's be honest, neither do the farmers outside of the city. I mean, they're all pretty much the same, more or less. I think there's one vampire that owns a mill, which is kind of interesting. That's about it, right? Shopkeepers, they're all the same. I mean, they're the same dialogue, they're all exactly the same. Not here, which is a type of sort of attention to detail and depth I did not really expect all too much. So, now we can finally drop the background characters that aren't really that important and move on to the main ones. This is where one of them does get a sort of Raskolnikov moment, and I don't know why I'm using that example, but I think it's personally the character development that most fascinates me out of anything I ever read. I think on the basis of just the character, it's him or herself. But at any rate, the main character, arguably the main character, does have that sort of depth and does have a very deep moral dilemma about the entire situation. Thank you. So, I'm not going to say what it is, obviously, but those of you that have played it know that the... Oh, you know what I'm talking about, right? The moment you figure it out is all I'm going to say. The moment you figure it out and see what the catch is, you're thrown into this sort of moral dilemma if you have not somehow done things in the quest in a little bit of an inverted way. Which is possible, and we will get to that. But the main character does have, well, there's two things you can do, and they're polarly opposite to each other, and none of them is good. So, that's pretty interesting. At any rate.
What's a milk drinker like you do? Why? What are you gonna do? No need to get rough.
At any rate, the Dwarven armor confused me, and again, play the mod and you'll understand why that's also slightly humorous. I shouldn't be making these in-jokes, but I'm assuming a decent portion of the people watching this will have played the mod already to a point, if not through the entire thing, so yeah, I won't edit them out, I'll keep them. Now, what about some more technical stuff? What about the voice acting? Well, a tale of two halves, really. I'll try and keep the rest of the review slightly more brief than this semi-rant of character development, but essentially, a decent part of the voice actors, especially the more vital ones to the story, are really, really good. For a quest mod, they're really good. Could they pass in the vanilla game? A decent bit of them, yes. And then you get like a couple of them that just don't fit. Now, I understand that this is not a multi-billion-dollar team that's been assembled to create this really, really good piece of story writing and quest. I get it, that this thing is bloody free, right? I get that, but nonetheless, I can't just ignore it on the basis of the fact that I didn't pay money to play this quest, or I didn't need to pay money to play through this content. Some of the voice actors do feel out of place. Luckily, you don't need to talk to them. Ever. They have nothing, well, not nothing, they do exist, they do have their importance by virtue of the fact that they are alive, and that will come in relevant later as you progress through the story, but they don't have any vital information to give you, and you don't have any vital information to extract from them or give them. So, yeah, few voice actors out of place. Alright, let's talk about the overarching plot a little bit. So not the characters individually, which we've sort of discussed, more or less. I mean, really, you do have, like, one main character that's sort of like he is basically it's difficult to explain, but he is those two things that you can do to him. If that makes sense if you think about that for a second. He sort of becomes those two things, and you look at him like that, and it's the dilemma within you that really makes that character stand out. It's a nice battle. Let's watch it. Horse, obey me. But other than that, the characters are just, they're good. They work, and not a novel for or not only a novel, but not a story for, like, to rival Shakespeare, but they work. They're really, really good, and like I said, better than in vanilla Skyrim, a lot of them. So, What about the overarching plot itself? Is that any good? Well, that's what I'm talking about it. Yes, very good. How so? Well, is it engaging? Absolutely. You'd be shocked how attached you can get to the characters in the Forgotten City. Both literally the city and the quest, right? It really surprised me as well that I genuinely cared about the backstories of these characters. Now again, this probably stemmed a little bit from my paranoia, in that I wanted to find the, I wanted to find something, right? I wanted to find something out, and it's probably stemming from my paranoia that I get killed. That I really paid close attention to their backstories and tried to figure those things out. But you do get attached, especially after going through this sort of Groundhog Day mechanic again and again. So at first you might be pissed off at a character, and you might, I don't know, you might even attack him or intimidate him or something. But then a few hours later, you're gonna realize, well, I sort of get it, though. I mean, he's in this position. So you sort of go through this roller coaster of emotions with a couple of them, and they are relatable to an extent, especially if you sort of try and immerse yourself in the world, in the Elder Scrolls world, not just not the quest. But oh god! All right, let's go. Oh no, this is one of those things. A little bit of a difficult fight because she's leveled slightly higher than me. Don't do live recordings while reviewing. At any rate, what about... Oh. Okay. That needed to happen without commentary first. Are there any plot holes? Now this is where we're going to sort of touch on the... it's very cool looking. This is where we're sort of going to touch on the entire... subject of a few technical bugs and gameplay elements that sort of meh me out. To the extent of my knowledge thus far, there is one, but with a caveat that maybe there is an answer to this in the game, or in the quest itself. But I wasn't able to find it / ask the question that I wanted to ask. Because I had a bit of a bug with one of the characters that you interact with. No spoilers on who that was. In that his dialogue would sort of end abruptly, and then something would happen, and then the dialogue would start up again, and then it would end, and essentially in that sequence I could only ask one question, basically, or choose one dialogue option, and one of the dialogue options was to have a slightly lengthier conversation with him, and ask a few questions about the world, right? That I couldn't really do. I'm thinking that could be an SKSE problem. It could be, a conflict with any of the 80-something mods I have installed. I doubt it. It could be just the Skyrim Special Edition problem, because the mod, I think, works a lot better in... I believe it was ported over to Special Edition, so I think I suppose it potentially would work better in just regular Skyrim, maybe. I don't know, but I did have a few of those technical difficulties. So, other than that one plot hole of how is that character there, I don't think there is anything. I don't think there is anything that left me sort of, huh? How did that happen? However, now that I've touched on some of the technical doodads of the mod, I already mentioned the, I'm going to go on with them, but I already mentioned the sort of Groundhog Day theme and mechanic of it, which look, it's not really Groundhog Day. It's just the most is the closest thing. I can compare it to, and it sort of has a somewhat similar theme to it. So this will be like Groundhog Society, though, not Groundhog Day. Huh? That's just confusing people and giving them the wrong idea, which perhaps is a good thing. Who knows? At any rate, not everything in the game Groundhog Day, if that's a valid description of anything in the world. What I mean is, essentially something is supposed to happen when certain conditions are met. It wasn't consistent. Now, again, this is a technicality and nothing to do with the story, but it wasn't consistent. Some things reset completely, but the idea was, like in Groundhog Day, you retain your own memories and skills and everything, even items in this case. Well, items on you in your pockets, right? It wasn't consistent. I didn't lose anything, but you'd expect sort of everything to revert back to the basic state, kind of like reloading a save game, right? Which is basically what happens. How and why I will not spoil, but that's basically what happens, that every now and again you might, again this is optional, you might put yourself in a position of the world basically reloading. Okay? But it's entirely optional. So I haven't spoiled anything because it's, again, entirely optional. You could finish the entire thing without having that happen once. In fact, you can probably, if you're going to speedrun it, you can finish them on in like a few minutes. But you need to know what you're doing, and obviously it's just to get from A to B, not to finish everything that the mod has to offer. But at any rate. Other than that, some things just didn't reset. The most annoying thing was the plants, because it was super obvious as soon as you start again. As soon as you do that, you see that all the sort of the cabbages and wheat and stuff that you picked is still missing, even though it was supposed to, reload. It didn't. So that was like, it ruined it a little bit for me, because like, oh, it's... So what happened here is that, at any rate. Was there anything else? Well, there was one instance where something, again regarding this mechanic, was supposed to happen and it just didn't. And the game didn't realize it. The NPCs didn't realize it, and everything just went on as if the events didn't occur, and said NPC did not, well, one of the NPCs in question did not die. It just sort of froze up, I guess, in its logic, which was a bit odd. And next was the ending being buggy as hell. Not the ending, but the final confrontation, if you will. It doesn't have to be a confrontation. Again, we'll get to the freedom that this story allows for after this, but the ending confrontation sort of glitched out, and in one instance I was fighting, in the next I was talking, and in the next I was fighting again, and when the fighting was over, nothing happened. Literally nothing happened. So I needed to do the entire thing all over again, and that time it worked. But yeah, it's a bit glitchy. In both the conversation and other things as well. But that's the only instances I encountered where there were problems. I finished other sort of sub-quests, I finished entire storylines for certain characters, and their sort of backstories and whatnot, and their sort of tasks for me in the area I finished without any problem whatsoever. And yeah, it just everything was fine. Up until those 2 or 3 instances, that is. At any rate, what about the freedom that the game does or does not allow for? What? That was a pathetic scream. Well, silver fight. Please don't tell me you spew silver. Potentially spews silver. So, like I said, you could finish the game, or the mod, extremely quickly, which is a good sign, right? It allows for freedom. Well, it has multiple endings, which is, for me at least, a very, very good thing indeed for most games, and most situations for, and not just RPGs, but in general. I think it's good to have your actions result in something different as the end product, I suppose, or as the ending. But it has multiple endings, and it does have different things that you can do throughout the story that don't just affect the well, do affect the ending, but affect different things as well that aren't necessarily the ending itself. So that it does allow for freedom. It does allow for you to choose whether you're going to do something or not. And really choose whether you're going to do something or not. It does allow for you to roleplay a decent bit. I mean, if you want to just be done with it and you know, change your mind midway and go like, I just want to go back to being the Dragonborn, go back to Skyrim and do my thing there, you can focus on that, if you will. And yeah, you can endeavor to get back as fast as possible, and fair enough. Good for you. Or you could try and find the best possible solution to the problem at hand and try and commit yourself more. It really does allow for all of this to... it does leave it up to you. Whereas most quests in games like this, these sort of give you one solution they envisioned, and you arrive at it regardless of your motivation. Here, really, you can do all sorts of things that play out differently. And in fact, some of the quote-unquote worse and less happy solutions leave for a much more interesting experience, I think, because now your character has to live with his actions and the fact that you've done something that is now beyond repair. This is, I think, often somewhat, not somewhat, but quite simplified in Skyrim, as in, do you kill this character or not? That's about it. Now, there's few moral dilemmas that you get to sort of carry on after the quest in the Elder Scrolls and sort of think about later. And this mod has left me thinking about what I've done. Right, so it does, to an extent, touch deeply upon your psychology. In the, especially the ending. The process itself, more or less, but how you get to the ending does... Oh, God, the unprofessionalism. I'm sorry, that was my phone. Does linger. Let's just say, does linger with you. At any rate, no, hold on. There is one issue, though, and this is something that's difficult to get around, I understand. More than that, it's it's extremely difficult to get around, because essentially, this is how, and this is more of a, well, it's not really a game problem, but Bethesda games have this thing in common, right? All of them. In fact, even the ones that aren't exactly made by Bethesda, for example, New Vegas, made by Obsidian, they all have this problem. That is, what if you refuse a quest? Right? In most situations, if not all of them, one of two things will happen. The NPC in question will either say, okay, come back later, or will give you the quest anyway and tell you, if you want to do it, if not, fine. This is how Bethesda gets around you not accepting quests. they sort of give them to you anyway, right? Which is not exactly, there's no permanent penalty or anything along those lines. Here, however, this is strange in one scenario here. And in fact, one of two or three scenarios that you can get, which does make it a problem. Here's the thing. You tell the Jarl something, which is game-changing for his... Did I say Jarl? Shit, ignore that. You tell someone something, you don't know which Jarl anyway, so it's again, like I said, it's gonna say mostly spoiler-free in the thing, the title. So you tell the Jarl something which is supposed to be game-changing. For something, okay? Again, no spoilers. It's impactful and meaningful. And regardless of the fact, the Jarl has the exact same dialogue as if you were to just say, "Hi, can I help you?" essentially. You know? You have like two dialogue options that are very, very, very different. One presumably already imposes the answer, the other one just leaves you sort of to figure things out. The dialogue is exactly the same, the quest is exactly the same, you have to do exactly the same thing. It wasn't it felt unfinished. It felt like you had, one of those, like, essentially it's a branching path in RPGs. So you make one decision or the other, and then they lead to different things. And they can overlap, you can end up at the same spot. But this felt like you took the dialogue option on the right rather than the left, and it just led you exactly to the one on the left. Right? It just led to just went back to the one. It's like you didn't click it at all. Essentially, there was like one or two lines of dialogue that were like, "Whoa, why, how?" and then just go back to the previous dialogue. Felt very off. If you want to take a look at some basically the right way this was done, and then the very immersive way that this was done, take a look at something like the Telltale Games point-and-click adventure titles, any of them. Walking Dead specifically is the one I noticed this with the most. The game can give you 4 or 5 different options, which are all very, very different at the time. They seem very, very different at the time, but lead to the exact same conclusion and the exact same end result. Thing is, you don't notice that until you played the game again and click the other option, right? This felt very much like there's stuff missing here, so we're going to just throw you back to the other option that you didn't pick. In those games, for example, here's a thing. Here's a good example from the Telltale games. Who gets to go across the bridge first? I think it was a frozen lake then, but yeah. Who gets to go across it first? And you might think, well, okay, this determines basically who is put in danger and who dies. In actual fact, the same person may die, right? The same person may die regardless of whether he goes at the front or the back of the column. Here, it felt like I picked him to go to the back of the column, but he went to the front anyway. And then died. Now, this has nothing to do with columns walking on ice or The Walking Dead. It's just an analogy, if you will, for kind of how that felt. So, the good thing is, though, that's pretty much my only criticism of the game, or of the story. Of the game, the few bugs that I encountered, which, again, personal experience, they may not be there at all for you. It may just work perfectly. Like I said, it could be a mod conflict. But this wasn't. This was simply writing. Okay? So that was the one thing that I found slightly off in the entirety of the story for like 10 hours. The one thing that felt sort of, this doesn't seem right. Okay? Here's the thing. I'm a bit of a cynical bastard, and I found around 50 times more stuff to complain about in the game itself, Skyrim. So I will put it to you without a hint of a doubt in my mind that this is so well written on the whole that it dwarfs even some of the major quests in The Elder Scrolls Skyrim. In terms of the quality of the story and the storytelling. In terms of that specific thing. And I'm quite confident when I say that. Now, let's get back to the overarching plot again. So, is there anything else to say? Well, sort of let's sum things up as far as the story is concerned. It's great. It's immersive. It's lore-friendly. It draws you in. It makes you. Okay, so I'm not gonna make this as a statement, but personally, it did make me feel for a few of those characters a lot, like quite a lot, and for the entire well-being of the entire city, a fair amount. Okay, it did. But it just, a few characters specifically made me feel for them quite a lot, right? Maybe quite emotional, and it's a great thing. It always is a really good thing when something like that happens. So, it might. I feel like I need to praise this entire storytelling a little bit more, because I'm gonna provide another sort of slightly negative thing about it in a second, but it's gonna come off as I'm complaining too much, and it definitely does sound like that because I think I have more complaints than praises. But there's only so many times I can say it's fantastic, right? It's really good for a story of any kind. It's better than most things I've played in Bethesda games, right? So it's fantastic. And the writer himself, shout out to him, by the way, has been... I've seen quite a few rewards that he received as a result of this story, so congratulations on everything. It's well-deserved, and then some, and I really hope that you get an offer, if you haven't already, from Bethesda or CD Projekt Red or some big RPG maker to write a few quests for them, because it's great. For games, for video games, right? Why do I say that? I'm majoring. I haven't majored yet. I'm majoring, but I'm practically already there from English literature. So I am the worst person to praise your stuff. Quite literally, because I will nitpick it to death. It's what I've been doing for ages now, and it's sort of my job. Well, no, it's what I do in uni, but sort of uni is your job at this point in life, right? Essentially, I am the worst. I am a literature critic. It's essentially what uni turns you into. I mean, you nitpick everything. And analyze every detail of everything, so I'm the worst person to just straight up praise a story. But I do believe I provide constructive criticism, which was kind of the point of this review as well, to provide some constructive criticism. So with that said, the story is awesome. It really is, especially for you know, a free quest mod that you get to play around with for a few hours, and it's in terms of the way it was just written down is fantastic. The way it was executed, again, other than the few bugs, really good. But there is another thing that I sort of well, would change, essentially. And this is so let's go and for a second, that was a terrible idea. Why did I jump in freezing water? Let's talk for a second about the way New Vegas did their ending. Or the way Mass Effect did their ending. So this is related to the ending of the mod itself, obviously. Of the one of multiple endings. And yes, there always is the argument, if you didn't like it, go and get another one, right? It's not how it works. You don't pick an ending like you pick condiments on in a restaurant or in a fast food store. Restaurant? Fast food store? Restaurant? Fast food fast food place, right? So, one of the endings felt too, I don't know, almost too happy, right? In the sense that everything was ideal. To the point of being banal and just felt artificial. And here's the problem. That would work if the story was slightly worse, oddly enough, right? Here's why. If the story was slightly worse, was slightly less serious, and was slightly was put together more poorly, then this would work, because it would sort of just fit. You know, story's somewhat light-hearted, not that terrific. The ending is the same, right? One of the endings was too ideal, and this is why I said let's take a look at the way Mass Effect and New Vegas did their endings, because, for example, in New Vegas, you could do something that seemed great, that seemed like you helped a society out, or a tribe, or whatever, and in the ending you would find out that they're doomed and they're all dead, or they're suffering or something. This wasn't exactly commonplace in New Vegas, and yes, you could get the ideal ending, but this could also happen, right? Here, most of the endings, like I said, linger with you, make you think what sort of person I am, and stuff like that. But the best one you can get is just banal. It feels banal. I'll explain why. Essentially, everyone is elated. Everyone is just elated with you. They are living in they are the happiest they have ever been. It's all fantastic. Nobody suffered anything apart from one character. Everything is just perfect. Flowers and roses everywhere. And no, it doesn't fit with the rest of the story. So the way I would do it is, sure, you've improved the lives of everyone, but a few of them are just dead. How about that? Right, a few of them have died. A few of them have been enslaved. A few of them have been tortured to death. Something like that, right? Have a darker twist. Because the alternative, and one of the quickest, I suppose, endings you can get, is incredibly dark. Right? Essentially, well, it's just terrible, right? Not the ending, but what you do is you sort of do something terrible. You do something really, really terrible. I'll just bury my head in the snow, yes. You do something really, really terrible, and that's about it. Live with that, basically, is the entire idea. In comparison, that one just felt off. Could have been just me. Probably was. But it really did felt like that. There was, and this is to the point of, there was one character that was incredibly annoying. Right? There is no way in hell you do not find this character annoying. And he sort of becomes like those people that he mocked. And the people that he mocked sort of become more well-off than he is and sort of get to look down on him a little bit now. That's banal, right? And you can see in the things they say as well. It's just, it felt off compared to the rest of the story, which dealt with just consequences, crime and punishment, dealt with genocide, dealt with, you know, just these pretty serious topics. That just felt like a, I don't know, out of place and somewhat humorous. Speaking of which, what about the humor in the game? There isn't any. No. What about, so are there any, like, jokes and stuff like that that work or don't work? I've seen one that was very direct. And at first I thought, well, that doesn't, I'm not sure about it, but yeah, I'm for it. I'm for it. It sort of, it caught me a little bit off guard, but it made sense. In retrospect, it made sense. A lot of sense, actually. And this was at the end of everything. There was this joke was thrown in sort of by one of the characters. And I'm like, well, hold on, that makes a lot of sense. Now, they would be joking around now, wouldn't they? They would be, it wouldn't be as dark now, would it, now that it's all over, right? What is all over? Yeah, you'll see. Actually, it depends. It depends on what is all over, and then you might not even get that, but, I mean, you might not even get that joke depending on your choices, but at any rate. There we are. Okay. So, now what I need to do is I need to figure out a way to praise the story a little bit more, because I will come off as overly critical. Which I am not. Again, so I think saying that it's better than most of the stuff that I played with, most of the stuff that I played in like regular Skyrim is high enough praise. But yeah, I mean, there we go. That would be more or less it. Is there anything else that was really, really good about it? Yes, actually. And it's gonna be difficult to.
Won't you buy a flower?
It's gonna be difficult to phrase this without spoiling anything. But let me try. There is a certain set of things you can do. Or a set of things that you need to do in order to get to some information. The way you go about acquiring this, and this sort of detective work that can or cannot, but usually does, happen, is really well thought out and well implemented. This is like a mix between storytelling in the traditional sense and gameplay, and it worked very well. It worked better than anything I've played in the vanilla game, and this type of detective work worked better than a lot of different RPGs, and even some RPGs let's try again, which put a lot of focus on like detective work and investigations and stuff like that. It worked better than even those games. Again, phrasing this without spoilers is a bit difficult. So essentially, what you do is you need to figure something out. The way you go about doing that takes you in 100 different directions. Most of them have nothing to do with what you need, which is a good thing. Matter of fact, in the process of you doing, or really not attempting to figure this out, you unveil more about the characters, as you would expect. And as you unveil more about these characters, some of them more important than others, you sort of, I don't know, things just sort of happen, right, to nobody's surprise, and it works for some reason. What do I mean by that? You're investigating, fine, okay, nobody you're with me so far, right? You're investigating, and You uncover different things about different people, and this just feels very organic. That you would find this miscellaneous stuff that has nothing to do with anything, but you found it anyway because you're snooping around different places, uncovering different things. There is an entire process that you sort of go through, and this is what I talked about when I said I was at times feeling a bit paranoid. You're trying to find something, and you sort of start accusing everyone and their mother. And I was guilty of this. Absolutely. So I sat down, I took my hands off the mouse and keyboard, and I started thinking, who could it be? Okay, let's end that thought there. So I started thinking about various scenarios and options, right? But yeah, that's more or less it. All right. Oh, whoops! I just hit the thing. Okay. There's like Sherlock Holmes detective work that's very organic and is just done better than a lot of the stuff that I've seen out there. It just feels organic, which I don't think I've seen it with this much attention to detail done really all that often at all. Okay.
Good luck on your travels.
Will that be everything regarding the story? I think so. Yeah. Pretty sure that's about it. So, ultimately, go and play this thing, because it's amazing. One more thing, though. The reward. Oh, God, the reward. You could say the experience itself for this quest was the reward. It definitely was. But it starts off promising you all sorts of things. Anything your heart desires, almost. And it starts off when it gives you the letter. This is the first thing you read when you open the bloody thing, right? This is not a spoiler. I can read the entire note to you. You're going to get it within a few minutes of installing the mod. It's the first thing that happens. You haven't even begun the quest at that point. This is how the quest begins. It's by you reading this letter. I think I still have it in my inventory, or did I... No, I don't think I do. At any rate, this, it promises you everything, and you leave, well, feeling horrible, or great, depending on what you did, but you do leave, and you don't really get what you want.
It's good to relax when I can.
Do you? I mean, what I wanted was money. Sort of the theme of the character, right? He's trying to accumulate as much money as possible. I didn't get... Well, I got a bit, but not a lot. I got a bit mostly from stealing and, you know, stuff that I did that wasn't necessarily my reward for doing the thing. You do get sort of power, if you will, at the end of the quest. No, that's not a spoiler. You do get a sort of power, but even that, it's good. Don't get me wrong; it's very good. It's a very useful power, but I don't know. For like 10 hours of questing, I would have expected something different, right? Something more tangible and different. Wasn't that power tangible enough, and is it, you know, different in the sense that it can't be acquired in the game in any other way? Yeah, but there is no real choice of reward, right? I would have liked a few options to choose my reward or get different rewards based on what I did. right? So yeah, I think that would that would have made sense. At any rate, there I go off again, criticizing something that. Well, you know what? Was it Oscar Wilde that said to criticize the most natural thing in the world? As natural as breathing to humans? Yeah. I'll agree with that. Actually, I'm not sure who said it, but I agree with it, but I think I just overdid it a little bit. Again, trying to provide positive feedback, not, I have no malintentions or anything, but, yeah, ultimately, the mod is utterly fantastic. Is it the best quest mod I've played? Yes. The story is fantastic. The idea of it, I have not seen practically ever done in a video game, and I've not seen it done this good in a video game, though the basic sort of overarching idea of it. It touches on some deeper subjects than you would expect. Like I said, crime and punishment, morality, stuff like that. Genocide and all that. Especially if you sort of think about it, and it just sounds cliche as all hell. You could just blast through the entire thing, not really paying attention to a lot of the things. Well, you can't. It will stick to you, right? It will stick to you. But if you stop after everything's done to think about, you know, what acts you have just committed, it creeps up to you, shall we say? And it's yeah, it's funny. It's funny. Not a lot, if any, quests in Skyrim do that to you. But yeah, fantastic mod. Go out and pick it up. And tell me if you wanna see a brief spoilers discussion. For those of you that have finished the mod, it would be a lot more brief and a lot easier to phrase. So you know, just that and done. Tell me if you want to see something like that for those of you that have finished the mod. Even if those of you that haven't and don't mind the spoilers, which you should. I highly recommend that you finish the mod first and then look at spoilers. But yeah. At any rate, that would be pretty much everything. Have fun, take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.